Okay, Rutgers comes away with, against last year's national championship game, runner-up against the Washington Huskies at home in Piscataway. Wasn't pretty, but we'll take it. Let's get to it. So Rutgers comes away with a 21-18 victory over the Washington Huskies in a game and a score that was a little closer than it really needed to be at the end, but nonetheless we pull it out on the heels of a missed 55-yard field goal by Washington that was never going to have a chance. Their special teams and kicking game is not great. Nonetheless, we get the big win. We're 4-0 for the first time in 12 years, I believe. 2012, we've had 3-0 seasons the past in a recent history. But, you know, once we get into the Big Ten season, things start to change a little bit. So this is a good win, and it'll be on to Nebraska. We'll get to that a little later. It's good atmosphere. And they announced that the game was a sellout, but you know how it goes with the announced attendance. I'm always wondering, really? Is that what it didn't look like there was, 45,000 people here tonight to me, but they showed up last night, and you can tell because of the shuttle buses and the traffic and how crowded it was, and the fans were fired up. Everybody, it was a blackout crowd. Everybody did a good job with that. Coach even said after the game, even during warm-ups, the student section and fans were really vocal. It was a legitimate atmosphere last night. I have to say, it's almost better when, playing teams that people don't really care about because it's easier to get out of the stadium. It was tough getting out last night. There's just the way that campus was built and set up, and you have one lane going in and out for the buses getting back to the rack or wherever you have to go. It's just a nightmare. It took forever. It was almost 1:30 by the time I got home last night. Maybe it was like 1:15. But nonetheless, big win, great atmosphere. Coach, after the game, he looked tired. I don't know if it was like a good tired from a hard-fought team or a hard-fought game against a very good team, or I couldn't tell if he, was just physically and mentally drained, or he was annoyed. It's probably a little bit of everything. There was definitely some things that need to get cleaned up, and this is the perfect kind of game for a coach that you win, but there's some things that they're going to need work on, and Coach kind of had that look on his face. Once again, he was happy with the team's grit and determination. They all can't be works of art. That Miami-Virginia Tech game last night, boy, I was rooting for Virginia Tech, which is not something I normally do. Virginia Tech win against was it number 8 Miami or whatever they are. Our win against Virginia Tech would have looked a lot better, and I've never really loved the Miami program anyway. I think they got kind of hosed on that Hail Mary touchdown at the end by drones. There was not enough there to turn that play over. They called it a touchdown on the field. I'm not sure what visual evidence they were looking at, but nonetheless, these games all can't be works of art. You're going to need to win these games. But going forward, though, you have to start to separate yourself. And this was a game sort of like Virginia Tech, where even though Washington outgained us and had all the yards, this was a game we could have, had we made a couple plays, we should have won by a bigger score. We'll get to that in a second. nonetheless, both teams kind of played to their type. I said going in my preview, Washington scoring offense is not great. They average 24 points a game. That's like number 76 in the country, but they get a lot of yards, and they averaged 456 yards per game going into the game. They had 521 yards last night. We talked about how if they're going to move the ball in between the 20s, okay, Will Rogers is going to make his plays, and he did. That's okay. You can bend, but don't break, but make the plays when you have to. And if they get to the red zone, you're going to have to do a good job, because once Washington got to the red zone, they have an 85% success rate. Not last night. They were 2 for 5. We were 2 for 2. And that was one of the things that helped Rutgers win the game, that in certain areas of the game, important areas of the game, we were a little better. We said, also about Washington's, despite their prolific offense, they have issues on 3rd and 4th down. I think on 3rd down going into the game, they were like 43%. They were like middle of pack nationally. Not very good on 4th down, 33%, which was 110th or 11th, something along those lines. Last night they only had 2 first downs. They were 2 for 12. We were 7 for 15, and that kind of matters. In my game preview, I said it's okay if Rogers gets yards. If you get pressure on him, make him uncomfortable, disrupt his rhythm. Coming from that air raid offense at Mississippi State, he likes to be able to have fluidity and have a nice smooth play transition and have a clean pocket, but disrupt them a little bit. Maybe you can cause them to have some 3rd down incompletions. And although our pressure, we were getting back there all game, but we weren't getting close enough. A couple times we did, and we'll get to that in a minute as well, how not getting Rogers to the ground kind of hurt us on 3rd down or completed passes to get a first down. 4th down, Washington was a little better last night. They were 2 for 4. Of course, one was towards the end of the game when they were trying to get into the end zone when they were already down 10, trying to get some late scores. But Washington did what they do. They commit a lot of penalties. They had 16 in the one game. They had 6 or 7 last night, but they had some bad ones. And they had a bad one on a 37-yard field goal by Rutgers that was blocked, but there was a penalty called for illegal substitution. We eventually we got the first down on that play and eventually get a touchdown pass to Ian Strong, beautifully high-pointed catch. So their mistakes, and we talked about this in the preview, manage the offense, don't let them score in the red zone. Get them to commit mistakes, maybe some turnovers, maybe some sacks, and some penalties, and some of that worked out. So Washington kind of played to their type. Rutgers, we did what we do what we do. We did just enough. We only had 299 total yards. It doesn't look good on the stat sheet. But there were missed opportunities in there. We easily could have had 50, 60, 70, 80 yards more. There's a couple dropped passes on there that I think probably would have been touchdowns if they were held on to. But we'll get to that in a second. We had 184 yards, Washington, a little better showing than Virginia Tech last week. 145 yards passing by Ethan Kalikimanis. His stats weren't gaudy. 14 for 24, 115 yards, a touchdown, 0 interceptions, 0 fumbles. For the season, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, and to have that kind of a ratio for our quarterback position at Rutgers, that's pretty good. We need to tighten some things up, maybe loosen up the play calling a little bit and be a little more productive in the passing game, but that's a story for another day. Early on, he looked a little bit off. Now, he wasn't inaccurate. He wasn't throwing bad balls. He never seems to throw a bad ball. They're all pretty catchable. But a little off, a little bit behind. I think he was a little bit behind Daimir on the first series or second series in the game. But after the first couple of series, more decisive. He felt comfortable. I was more comfortable with the way that he looked throwing the ball. And he had a couple drops, maybe 2 or 3 drops. Ian Strong, Kenny Fletcher, KJ Duff, I think. So I think there's 3 right there. I think a couple of them would have been touchdowns. I mean, they were just open. Actually, a couple of them. There was open field in front of them, and I think they had wide eyes and just dropped the ball. That could have been a couple big plays that could have extended the score and made Washington scramble to try and claw back into the game. That's what I'm talking about in those moments where you need to be able to execute, because one play like that changes the entire dynamic of the game. And when you miss those opportunities like we did last week against Virginia Tech on 4th and 1 down near the goal line, what happens? Virginia Tech crawls back into the game. The offense starts moving the ball, and you can't give teams like Virginia Tech or Washington those opportunities, because they will and do take advantage of them. And on a couple other passes, Ethan was a little off, maybe a little bit behind. I think, early on to Daimir, might have been behind on one on a third down. But there were one of the things I said going in to stem the tide of Washington's very good pass defense, to hit those quick slants on the knees, open in space, get the ball to our playmakers in space so they can get yards after catch. And it looks like we actually tried that a few times. But a couple times Daimir, from section 124, oh, great, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and it came up just short, maybe a half a yard on one, a yard on another. So need to get the route and the timing down a little bit better on that, but I think they have the right idea. Just need to execute a little better. But, 7 of, nonetheless, despite those shortcomings, you're 7 for 15 on third down. That's pretty good. And only 4 penalties, by the way. So we're not turning the ball over. 4 penalties for 30 yards. Boy, this has got to make Coach Schiano like the happiest guy on the planet. When you don't turn the ball is the program. Excuse me. And you only have 4 penalties. One of them which drove me nuts, because it was when Washington was trying to crawl back into the game. They got a late touchdown, couple minutes left. We kick it off, and then we commit a penalty on a fair catch on the kickoff that gives Washington the ball up around the 40-yard line. And I'm like, no, man, we can't let them get a couple passes and then kick a game-tying field goal. This is ridiculous. I wasn't happy with that. Overall, penalties were good. 0 turnovers. But the running game, and I was happy to see we made a little bit of a comeback. We talked about this in the preview, how Washington's defense is very good, but if they are going to be somewhat more vulnerable, it's against the run. I didn't start off feeling good about this. Those predictable RPO runs to Kyle up the middle, they're going to be ready for it, and they were ready. We'd get a yard, we'd get 2 yards, maybe get 3 yards. Drives me nuts. I'd like to see down a little more misdirection, but I guess you want to kind of avoid being cute, and you just want to feed the beast and use your bread and butter. Nonetheless, we had 33 carries, 184 yards rushing. That's an improvement over Virginia Tech. Kyle had 25 for 132, 5.3 yards per carry, a touchdown, and an electrifying 40-yard run where we might have, after a punt, I believe, we were down around the 2-yard line. And Kyle gets some running room with a spectacular run that he kept He must have broke 4 or 5, maybe 6 tackles, dragging the pack along with him, and kind of electrified the crowd, and that was stupendous. Sam, 5 carries, 44 yards, and a 37-yard touchdown up the middle, ran away from the defense. Loved seeing that, and it came at a critical time of the game because it was 14-10. Virginia Tech had scored, and you were the second half momentum shift. You felt it coming, and kind of saying to myself, here we go again. We came out flat in the second half, offensively and defensively. So Sam getting that 37-yard burst up the middle was terrific. You know, again, we have to avoid those predictable RPOs. I believe it was the last series of the game for us. You knew what we were going to do. There was like 5 minutes left on the clock. That's a lot of time left. You want to use up more clock. Don't be so predictable. I know you don't want to get cute. You know, run the ball to Kyle 3 times in a row. You wind up coming up a yard short. We get Washington back the ball. They made things a little, made things a little nervous for us towards there at the end. I wouldn't even mind a screen pass on that, or you know, let Sam get the tough yards, because you know they're going to be keying on Kyle, and those plays sometimes are really slow to develop, and that drives me nuts. Nonetheless, good job by the running game against a really good defense. I don't care that Washington's 2-2. They're going to be a better team by the end of the year as they come together. They certainly can move the ball. They're a big physical team. This is a Big Ten team, and with that offense, they're going to give some people some problems. They just need to finish out their drives. Now, wide receivers. To me, the story of the game for the wide receivers was missed opportunities, either by them or by Ethan. You know, we talked about those drops. You know, we got an extra touchdown or two on, or at least a long play where you can get some more scores on the board. That certainly shifts the momentum and the tide of the game. There's a couple more, maybe 2 or 3 more times that Ethan was pressured, and they were getting good pressure on Ethan early. But there was a couple in particular where I think it was Daimir and Ian Strong, were both open, and they again were so wide open. If Ethan could have just had an extra couple seconds, there would have been opportunities for even more bigger plays. We could have had another couple huge plays. So this game, a few plays here and there, you know, this 21-18 game is, you know, maybe a 38-35-18 game if we could have taken care of business in those moments. Coach always says, you know, stay in the moment. If we could have taken care of business a little better on attention to detail on pass catching and pass blocking. On the one play, I think the linebacker came free and he was unblocked. So otherwise, that probably would have been a touchdown. Fletcher, you know, big third down drop. We're using the tight end more regularly, and I love to see that. And on this third down, pass out to the flat, wide open, no one in front of him, and the crowd just went into a big groan. So that was one I probably should have had, but nonetheless, Daimir was targeted early, and he, you know, a little bit behind on 1 or 2 passes to him. He had 2 catches, 15 yards. I'm not sure what his targets were, because he looked like he was a little more involved in the game plan than what his box score says. Came up short, like I mentioned previously, on a couple third down plays where it looked like he might have had the first down, but, you know, we were just a half a yard short. Big games like this, Daimir has to be a little more of a presence, even though Ian Strong had a pretty good game. KJ Duff, here's another one. KJ Duff, big drop. That's a touchdown too. So there were a few plays that could have extended some drives and extended the scoreboard to the point where people would have to look at Rutgers as this team being for real. But he had one catch for 15 yards. So the wide receivers, probably not enough opportunities. I'd like to see our passing game let Nathan open it up a little more, but without diverging too far from our identity as wanting to run the ball. But I think there's a little bit of balance to be had. So the wide receivers had some opportunities last night, but just not enough action and not enough execution on 3 or 4 plays. The defense. Okay, so going into the game, I said it's okay if Washington gets their yards between the 20s as long as they're opportunistic. Maybe get a turnover, maybe get a sack, pass deflection on a big third down, make Washington have to kick field goals, not touchdowns. We kind of did that, but there were times when we were gashed. And I'm starting to get worried about the defense. This is supposed to be a strong point going into the year. And sitting in section 124, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm saying to the guys with me, like, where are the linebackers? These guys, they were just missing their assignments. They were just nowhere to be found at times. And they were just Washington receivers, even on plays where you get some pressure and it looked like, okay, you have an opportunity to make a play on defense here. Even with, I forget who it was wrapped around Rutgers. He kind of spun out of the sack, should have been sacked a couple times, got the ball off. Big completion to Boston, who had a big game. He's going to be an NFL receiver. Nonetheless, we played the type on defense. We bent. We didn't break. We almost broke, but not quite. We talk every week. Talk about getting the pressure, but actually getting the sack, getting the quarterback to the ground. We saw how knocking Jones on his butt in the end zone shifted the momentum a little bit against Virginia Tech, and we got the safety. If you could have gotten Rutgers down on those couple plays when we were wrapped around his feet, that's a couple first downs that they don't have, and they're not really in a position to make this game close. So defense absolutely needs to get more pressure from the defensive line. Quite frankly, in the running game, they were kind of gashed last night as well. The good news, in the red zone, Washington, we talked about this pre-game, 85% once they get to the red zone. Not last night. They were 2 for 5. I think they had a couple field. Did they have a couple field goals? Maybe a field goal and a touchdown. But the Rutgers defense did what I said, and we said that they had to do, and make a couple plays when you had to, and on third down, and that kind of worked out. In addition to 0 sacks, 0 tackles for loss. They gashed us at times, especially in the running game. Coleman had 16 carries, 148 yards, 9.3 yards per carry. I mean, we can't allow that to happen to anybody. I mean, he was averaging 5 yards per carry. I don't believe he had any 100-plus yard games. He wasn't really getting the ball a lot, but backup running back Davis had 8 carries for 42 yards. He averaged 5.3 yards per carry. Rogers, 26 for 36, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns. Hitting slants all day long. And this is something I'd like to see us do, those slants underneath. Guys are open. We have guys that could get into space. We need to, I don't know if we need to tweak the scheme or the pass patterns a little more, but we should be able to do the same thing where we get guys open underneath and be able to execute. Because I think our running game overall is a little better than Washington's. Boston, I said in the preview, you couldn't let him get behind the secondary. No big plays. Let him catch stuff in front of us. He had a couple of big plays. He had a 42-yard touchdown on maybe 6 catches, 125 yards, almost 21 yards per catch. That's a lot of productivity. And 2 touchdowns, by the way. Secondary, not a great game last night. They made plays when they had to in the end. When Washington was trying to get back in the game, but they made things a little closer than we would have liked. The 2-point conversion, I think it was a tight end, wide open in the. I mean, guys can't playing that zone defense. Guys can't be wide open for 2-point conversions. That's 3 in the past 2 weeks. That's another thing we're going to have to clean up. Time of possession in this game about even, 30-34 for Washington, 29-26 for Rutgers. So, Washington did a good job of kind of controlling the clock through the passing game, then mixing in the run and getting in those big chunk yards on the ground. Is it time to start worrying about special teams? Jay Patel, 37-yard field goal, blocked. We're extremely fortunate. This is something that might have happened to us in the past, and maybe we wouldn't have gotten the benefit of that in the past. But on this blocked field goal, Washington was, and this is what we talked about, Washington making mistakes, get them into positions where they commit penalties and make mistakes. Illegal substitution on that play, automatic first down. We get a first down and an eventual touchdown pass from Ethan Kalakamanis to Ian Strong, high-pointed, beautiful. Is it time to start worrying about special teams? And Jay Patel, that's a couple weeks in a row, 36, 37-yard field goals that weren't successful. We punted 7 times tonight. Washington punted only twice. Don't want to see us be in a position where we have to punt a lot. We're good at kind of directional punting, but we don't want to give the other team an opportunity to get a return, get a big return, when quite frankly we don't return the ball a lot. We pretty much fair catch everything. So special teams, another thing that was a strong point for us in the past. My ears and eyes are starting to perk up a little bit to keep an eye on and see how it evolves throughout the season. I think we need to do a little better job. We need to clean some things up. Second half, we're coming out flat offensively and defensively. Can't always be the cardiac kids and pull it out in the end. We need to develop some consistency, execute in those moments we need to execute. Second half defense, second half offense has to be a lot better. Pressure, we talk about it every week, and we'll continue to talk about it every week until these guys start getting sacks. Second week in a row where we weren't able to get much in the way. I think, Wesley Bailey had the only sack last week. No sacks this week. Need to get pressure, need to disrupt the offense. We're going to be going up against Dylan Raiola next week. He's is not the rhythmic passer that Will Rogers is, but he's a strong pocket passer who's going to stand in there and he's going to wing that ball. So we have to be able, he can be disrupted. If you can get in his face a little bit, you can force him to kind of force a ball and make an error. Nonetheless, we need to get some more pressure, and along with that, more turnovers. We're not getting the ball. We're not turning the ball over as much as we should. Last night we had 2 or 3 tip balls, including one towards the end, that if we were just in the right spot or moved a little more quickly, a little more, ball awareness, we would have had a couple interceptions on tip balls. Nonetheless, we need to start turning the ball over, because you could stop drives, big momentum turn during a game. And this is something that, you give your offense the opportunity to, start from a short field. We haven't had a lot of short fields this year. Hopefully turnovers will come and we'll be able to run the ball down their throat and have some good, well-timed passes by Ethan to get some easy scores. Drop balls. We've had a few the past couple weeks. Those could be potential game killers and momentum changers if you don't pull out some magic at the end like we've done the past couple weeks. I also don't like that we get a little too conservative in some scenarios. Kyle is great. He's our guy. He's our workhorse. Those RPO runs up the middle. maybe you want to fake that a little more and quick pass and an Ethan designed run. And we do a little bit enough, but I don't think nearly enough. We need to keep the defenses a little more off balance so we could extend that one last drive like last night and put the game away. And along those lines, I think Ethan had one run last night, and I think Richie was talking about this on the night report. Should Ethan be running the ball a little more? I think Richie was kind of not on the side of that. I certainly am. He's an athletic, mobile quarterback, having some design stuff in there. Will keep the defense honest, keep them less keyed on Kyle. Let them key on Kyle. You can take it off and extend some drives. Next week we have Nebraska. I've been worried about this game all year. I think somehow they match up well against us. It's going to be in Nebraska. Shouldn't be too daunting a task, being that we just went into Blacksburg, which is an extremely hard place to play, like Nebraska, and we came out with a victory. Nebraska was a hot pick for one of those teams that everybody expected to do really well this year. Maybe there are times, they kind of have maybe underperformed expectations so far, but they still worry me. I'm worried about Dylan Raiola. Is he super accurate? Is he going to throw for 320 yards and 3 touchdowns or 2 touchdowns like Will Rogers? Probably not. But if we're not getting pressure, or if we can't get him to the ground and he's standing strong in the pocket, he's going to be able to hit those receivers if they're open. He throws the ball high a lot. I watched the game against Illinois. They have receivers that can really high point the ball pretty well. But if you get him just off rhythm, just a little bit, just to knock him off his timing a little bit, he will throw the ball astray, and we will have opportunities for interceptions. I think it's going to be a similar type of game. Notwithstanding Nebraska, getting 521 yards of offense. I think they're going to want to run it. I think they're going to want to throw the ball downfield, and they have a very good defense like Washington. I think we'll have a little more, some more opportunities against Nebraska. So it could be a similar kind of game where it's kind of close, both teams kind of moving the ball, but maybe not as much as they should, or not scoring as much as they should. I'll have a preview of this game coming up this week. But if we can go 5-0 heading into Lincoln, Nebraska, this sets up for a pretty good second half of the year. This is a big one. Last night was the first big one. And the next week, I think, is the pressure is going to start to build as there are more eyeballs on Rutgers going 5-0. I hope everybody enjoyed the game. We'll talk to you during the week with some reviews and previews of the Big Ten. Big day today in college football and Big Ten football. Everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend, and enjoy your weekend. We will talk to you soon.